Coming in at number 10, we have pirate treasure under Lady Libs. Here be treasure! Do I sound like a pirate or a farmer from the west side of England? I don't know, you decide. I love a good treasure in my urban legends, I really do. I know that the Statue of Liberty isn't technically in Manhattan, but it's very visible from Manhattan, so you know. Anyway, the story goes that the notorious Captain William Kidd hid his treasure on the island on which the Statue of Liberty has been erected. No wonder she's looking a little bit smug, she could be hiding gold under there. Captain Kidd was hung in London in 1701 for piracy, but a lot of his loot was never found. Many believe he hid his wares on what is now Liberty Island, and the rumour was so strong in the late 1800s that 2 soldiers went searching for it. Legend has it that they found it, but also disturbed the ghost of Captain Kidd, who scared them away. When they returned for the treasure chest, it was gone. Ba, ba, ba. That isn't the only pirate urban legend to sail through the mouths of New Yorkers either. Some even believe that a ghost ship haunts the Hudson. Coming in at number 9, we have the moles of Manhattan. Genuinely now, genuinely, when the subway was dug under Manhattan, people in New York believed that builders had come across mole people. That's right, mole people. By that I mean supposedly strange inbred people living underground. When the New York subway opened in 1904, this kicked off, but the urban legend saw a resurgence in the 1990s, and a whole bunch of first-hand accounts started popping and bopping up. Even today, a lot of citizens think there are communities of people living in lost tunnels of the subway. Of course, the legends have become richer over the years, and now people believe that they see in the dark and they speak their own strange moley language. Some people think they've got long claws, and some even think they're cannibals. Yikes, killer moles. In reality though, there are people living down there, but generally speaking they're down on their luck homeless people desperately trying to avoid being hit by trains, which is pretty grim. Okay, I guess this is a funnier urban legend, but at the same time pretty scary, because this could be the price of fame. Coming into number 8, we have Taylor Swift in a box. Welcome to New York. It's been waiting for you, still a banger, I love it. Taylor Swift moved to New York circa 2014 between her Red era and 1989 era and bought a home in Tribeca, one of the coolest neighborhoods in Manhattan. Taylor has been regularly photographed entering and exiting her home and has a constant swathe of fans outside her house waiting to catch a glimpse of the star, which actually is pretty terrifying if you think about it. I absolutely wouldn't be cool with people outside my house all the time. Anyway, somewhere along the line a rumor started that Taylor Swift now had to enter and exit her house in a box. It seems that people spotted men loading a large case into an SUV, and it sent the internet wild. I have to say though, if Taylor Swift does have to travel by box, and if that's the price of fame, then I don't want it. Coming into number 7, we have the Young Women of Woolman. This urban legend is so popular that the New York Times even ran a whole article on it. The Young Women of the Woolman ice rink are some of the most spotted ghosts in the city. They look like 2 ladies in well-off Victorian dress, and they have been seen ice skating on the Woolman rink after hours. One wears red and the other purple. It's thought that they are the wealthy Vandervoot sisters who lived with their overprotective wealthy father in his Manhattan townhouse. The pair would often escape to the park to get away from him together. Not in a mean way, just in a, you know, gotta live way. Both siblings died spinsters really sadly, and they died within months of each other in 1880. Around 35 years later, during the First World War, stories started circulating of 2 girls seen gliding over the 59th Street pond, with sightings at the Woolman rink beginning after it was built in the 1950s. The rink was actually formerly a pond that was skatable in the winter. Now the sightings occur frequently ever since in all weather, which would be really weird if you're like there in the summer chilling out with a beer in the park and 2 Victorian ladies just come skating by you. A stone's throw from Central Park is the Dakota building, the focus of our next urban legend. Coming into number 6, we have the living dead of the Dakota. Imagine there is no heaven. It's easy if you try. No hell below us, above us only sky. Oh, and a few trapped spirits of the dead haunting their former homes just for good measure. The Dakota building was built in the late 1800s and is one of the most beautiful and iconic buildings in all of New York, but it is also haunted as heck. The building was already said to be haunted before famous Beatle John Lennon lived there with Yoko Ono. In fact, Lennon even told Ono that he'd seen a ghost of a crying woman in the halls. Now sadly, John Lennon was murdered outside the building on the 8th of December 1980 by a crazy fan. He was aged just 40. Yoko Ono still lives in the building in a new apartment, but before she moved to her new space in the historic building, she saw the ghost of her husband sitting at his white piano. He reportedly spoke to her too. He said, "Do not be afraid, I'm still with you." Also, it's rumored that $30,000 is hidden under the floor of Lennon and Yoko's former apartment. Wow. Okay, we have a fancy hotel legend up next. Coming into number 5, we have Sid and Nancy in room 100. Hotel Chelsea is an iconic building, rather like the Dakota. It seems that throughout its rich history, it has been somewhat of a mecca for musicians and other artists. Known guests include Patti Smith, Mark Twain, Dylan Thomas, and Leonard Cohen, but the most notorious residents may have never checked out. Nancy Spungen was the OG groupie. She was the girlfriend of English punk rocker Sid Vicious, and she oozed sex, drugs, and rock and roll. In 1978, when the Sex Pistols broke up, the pair moved on out to New York and began living in the Hotel Chelsea. The pair took a lot of drugs, and there were horrible rumors that Sid Vicious used to beat his girlfriend. In October 1978, Nancy was found dead in the bathtub of room 100 with stab wound in the belly. Sid was arrested and he died of a heroin overdose on bail. Now the pair's presence is said to still be felt in room 100 to this day. Coming into number 4, we have the Manhattan Well. I don't feel good about wells. I think it's ever since The Ring. No. In the cold dead of winter in 1800, the body of a young woman by the name of Guelma Sands was found at the bottom of a brick wall on 129 Spring Street. The finding caused a great scandal as high flyer Levi Weeks was accused of killing her after they'd had an affair and she fell pregnant. He walked free in the end despite public outrage, and it is said that the lost soul of Guelma could be spotted near the well. Those who looked into it often saw a face staring back at them. The well was filled in 1817 due to its ghoulish history, but it was unearthed again in 1980 and is now amid a Cost store as an original feature. I wonder if it's haunted still. Coming into number 3, we have the most beautiful girl in New York. I love theatre and I love Broadway. I first went to Broadway in 2014 and I have been back 3 times since. I always want to go. Every time I go to Manhattan I have to see at least one Broadway show. 2 if budget allows, 3 if I get rich, and that would be nice. The New Amsterdam Theatre is one of the most historic venues on the Strip and is currently home to the Broadway production of Aladdin. The venue was built in 1903 and was known for its risque roof garden. It was a popular spot for socialites and members of high society, including silent film star Olive Thomas. She was dubbed the most beautiful girl in New York. She appeared on the stage at the New Amsterdam Theatre several times and was rumoured to be the mistress of Ziegfeld Follies himself. Sadly, the actress died in 1920, aged just 25. Now her death was one of the first publicised Hollywood scandals. Forever young, it also seems like she is forever present. Her ghost is regularly spotted at the theatre, although it's said she only shows herself to men. Coming into number 2, we have the Devil of 9/11. Popular belief among the people of Manhattan is that 9/11 was the work of the devil. With the death toll of nearly 3,000 innocent people, it's easy to see why someone might jump to that conclusion. But not only that, Satan's face was said to have been seen in the smoke that day, and some people even caught it on camera. Mark D. Phillips allegedly captured images of the face of the devil staring at the horrified city. Some call the images a hoax, but others believe that the photographs from the otherwise very credible photographer are real. Did the devil descend on Manhattan that day? I don't know about literally, but in many ways, yeah. It did. I know that this is a scary list, but I kind of wanted to end it in like a bit of a jovial, quirky, but still freaky way. I love a freaky legend. Steve Zeitlin runs an organization devoted to New York stories and legends, and this is his favorite. Coming into number 1, we have the Great Sawing of 1823. Did you guys know that Manhattan was sawn in half? According to a pretty hilarious urban legend anyway. The story was told in scholar Benjamin Botkins's 1976 book, New York City Folklore. Benjamin Botkins, what a great name. He said that in the ripe old year of 1823, a contractor by the name of Luzier noticed that the southern end of Manhattan was going to sink. The only remedy, he said, was to saw the island in half, turn it around and reattach it. I love it. Harebrained, and I love it. Now apparently, all of the labourers of New York got involved in the project. They did not want their beloved city to sink. They turned up in swathes to save Manhattan. Only when they showed up for work, they found out it was all an elaborate ruse by Lozier. He disappeared. Can you even imagine turning up, saws in hand, ready to like cut your city in half, only to realise that it's an elaborate lie by a wayward rogue and you, my friend, have been had? I honestly wonder if they would have gone through with it like, It's mad, but I like it.
Starting off at number 10 now, we have Bloody Bucket Bridge. This one comes from the town of Wauchula. There you can find an old road built over 100 years ago. To the locals, it's simply known as Bloody Bucket Road. Follow that along and you'll find Bloody Bucket Bridge, which crosses a narrow waterway that locals say sometimes runs red with human blood. The story goes that after the Civil War, a freed slave and her husband settled down in the town nearby. She was elderly and took up work as a midwife. It was very tough for her because every day she was reminded of the children that were stolen away from her when she was a slave. Eventually she began to lose her mind because of this. She would suffocate and kill babies that she delivered as they were being born. She would then bury them in the river and dump buckets of blood into the water by the bridge. Everyone thought the babies were just stillborn. By the time people became suspicious and stopped using her as a midwife, it's thought she killed about 100 babies. She was exiled and spent the rest of her days as a madwoman in the Florida swamps, screaming that she was being haunted by the ghosts of the babies. She always kept a bucket next to her that was said to fill up with ghostly blood. Legend says if you go to that bridge today and wait for a full moon, you can see the water run red with blood. Stay too long though, and you may even hear screams coming from the woods. Moving on to number 9 now, we have the skunk ape. A number of southern states in the US have the legend of the skunk ape, but I think it's most prominent in Florida. Ever since the 1960s and 70s, Floridians have been reporting the sight of a giant ape-like creature stalking the Everglades. More often than not, they don't just see this creature, they also smell it. It gets the skunk part of its name from its unbearable odor, said to be like methane or rotten eggs. Physical descriptions vary, but the skunk ape is said to stand about 7 feet tall and weigh up to 450 pounds. Locals say it lives in alligator caves along with dead animal carcasses. While most scientists have discredited the idea of a giant ape running around Florida, there are many people who swear by it. These days there's even an official skunk ape research headquarters in Ochapee. Researchers collect samples and investigate reports of swamp ape sightings. At the time of recording, they've yet to find conclusive evidence and the search continues. At number 8 now, we have the killer cloud. Honestly, out of all the urban legends that I've talked about on this channel, this is perhaps one of the most unique. In the woods along the Tomoka River on Daytona Beach, a strange pink cloud has been blamed for the disappearance of dozens of people over the years. The cloud was first seen in the 1950s and 60s and is said to appear during the colder months of the year. It's rumoured to devour the flesh off human bodies. Locals have reported finding human bones in the area after the cloud has disappeared. Some say that it's swamp gas or a local fog that covers only a small area. Perhaps the creepiest explanation though is that it's the angry spirit of Chief Tomoki, who was cursed for drinking from a sacred spring. Now he devours anyone who can't outrun the pink cloud. Next at number 7 now, we have the Tallahassee Witch. In 1889, Elizabeth Budd Graham was buried in the Old City Cemetery in Tallahassee. The 23-year-old was a wife and mother whose life was not overly remarkable. Locals have always found it strange then that her tomb is perhaps the grandest in the whole cemetery. Local legend says the reason is because Elizabeth was a witch. As with Christian tradition, the other graves faced east, but Elizabeth's faces west, the exact opposite. Her gravestone has a poem by Edgar Allan Poe engraved on it, which reads, "Ah, broken is the golden bowl, the spirit flown forever. Let the bell toll, a saintly soul floats on a Stygian river. Come, let the burial rite be read, the funeral song be sung, an anthem for the queenliest dead that died so young, a dirge for her, the doubly dead, in that she died so young." Now some people believe this holds clues to her being a witch. Broken in a bowl is said to refer to her killing a vampire. Doubly dead refers to witchcraft, as a witch must be killed twice to die. To this day, locals have reported modern day witches visiting her grave to pay their respects. Coming at number 6 now, we have the Gator Men. I'm sure any of you who are from Florida will know that it's famous for alligators, but have you heard of the Gator Men? Yes, there are allegedly half human, half alligator hybrids that live in Florida's Everglades. Going way back to the 1700s, you can find reports of these creatures. The top half is always said to resemble a human, but by the time you get below the waist, everything changes. They are said to have webbed feet, scales and tails. Not everything is an even split along the body though. Witnesses have reported that their teeth are not human-like. They say they're jagged and resemble alligator teeth more closely. They're said to be highly intelligent, aggressive and cunning creatures that travel in groups and even have their own guttural language. Without any recorded sightings though, the Gator Men remain swamped in urban legend. Moving on to number 5 now, we have the Devil's Chair. Legend says that in a graveyard in Casadaga, Florida, Florida is a chair that belongs to the devil himself. It's a wide brick bench that was supposedly built by the devil. Every night at midnight the devil returns to sit in this chair. It's meant only for him, and if you sit in it, he will have his revenge. Locals say that he whispers evil ideas in your ear while you're in the chair, ideas that will haunt you forever and send you down a spiral of evil doings that will result in you going to hell, where you can join him forever. Another strange addition to the legend is that if you leave a full unopened can of beer on the chair and return the next morning, the can will be empty but still unopened somehow. That's all I know. You'll just have to visit and try for yourself if you want to know more. Good luck. Moving on to number 4 now, we have the Riddle House. This Edwardian house was built in Palm Beach in 1905. From the outside it looks like nothing out of the ordinary, but its history has attracted paranormal hunters from all over the world. Its original purpose was as a funeral home, housing bodies overnight before their burial. In the 1920s it was bought by Carl Riddle, who turned it into a home for his family. They were terrorized by spirits of the dead from years gone by. Eventually one of the Riddle's employees hung himself in the attic room of their house because he saw no way out of the hard times he had fallen upon. Carl wrote in his diary that after that the energy in the house changed. Employees heard voices where no one was there. Carl removed the beam from which the man had hung himself, but the hauntings continued. The family were forced to leave. Years later the house was taken apart brick by brick and moved to the South Florida Fairgrounds, and amazingly people claim those ghosts went with it. They say some evil spirit still lives in the attic, attacking anyone who dares climb the ladder. Moving on to number 3 now, we have the ghost of the St. Augustine Lighthouse. Built in 1874, this lighthouse started out normal, being passed from owner to owner. That was until it came into the hands of Peter Rasmussen. His spirit is said to have imbued itself with a lighthouse. Now he was said to be absolutely obsessed with cigars, smoking multiple ones a day. All these years on, staff report smelling cigar smoke years after Peter died. Another legend involves a pair of girls, Eliza and Mary Pitty. They were playing in the nearby waters in the late 1800s while their mother worked on the lighthouse. In a tragic accident, the girls drowned. Staff say their laughter can still be heard from the top of the lighthouse every single night. Next up at number 2 now, we have Spook Hill. In the town of Lake Wales you can find Spook Hill. Locals will tell you that it's a must-see for anyone interested in the paranormal, although you may have already thought that based on the name. Legend says that if you stop your car on the right spot on Spook Hill and put it in neutral, you can experience your car rolling uphill. Most people are happy to just experience it, be a little bit scared and then move on. But for those of you who want to know the creepy side of things, you'll be pleased to know that there is a story meant to explain this. A nearby sign reads, "Many years ago an Indian village on Lake Wales was plagued by raids of a huge gator. The chief, a great warrior, killed the gator in a battle that created a small lake. The chief was buried on the north side. Pioneer male riders first discovered their horses laboring downhill, thus naming it Spook Hill. When the road was paved, cars coasted uphill. Is this the gator seeking revenge, or the chief still trying to protect his land?" And finally, number 1 now guys, we have Robert the Doll. Now I've talked about this doll a lot on this channel and it never gets any less creepy. In 1906, Robert Eugene Tott was given a doll as a boy in Florida. It was a gift from his nanny, who also dabbled in voodoo. The 40-inch tall doll was made of wood, stuffed with wool, and wore a sailor outfit. This is where it gets confusing. Robert gave up his name to the doll. He just gave it up and started calling himself Gene instead. Gene spoke to Robert the Doll all the time and swore the doll was real. Eventually, even neighbors began to think that they heard the doll whisper back, change its expression, or even move by itself. Some local children once claimed they saw the doll looking out of the top window of the family's home. The family began to think that their son's doll might be possessed. Yeah, I would too. No matter how much they wanted to get rid of the doll though, Gene just wouldn't let go of it. He kept this creepy doll for the rest of his life. These days the doll sits in a glass box at the Fort East Martello Museum. Despite the glass and the years that have passed, even the sight of him creeps some people out.
Starting us off at number 10 is Suicide Bridge. Starting off strong, you know how I am. Built in 1912, the Pasadena, Colorado Street Bridge is a scenic drive. It's on a riverbed, it has lamps, there's an old charm about it that makes it romantic almost, but it's also the site of many atrocities. Over 100 horrible suicides have taken place place of the bridge that the bridge is actually called Suicide Bridge by most. It garnered such a reputation that in 1993 they installed a suicide barrier on the bridge to try and lower the numbers. The stories of the suicides are also very hard to digest. In 1937, Myrtle Ward took her 3-year-old daughter to the bridge after her husband left her. She threw her daughter off the bridge and then leaped herself, but thankfully her daughter landed in a few thick branches which slowed her descent and left her unharmed, but Myrtle plummeted to her death. Many have seen her ghost on the bridge and in the riverbed below, forever looking for her daughter. Another story is more recent, taking place in 2008, where a man stabbed and killed his wife and grandmother and then killed himself. And that was only 2 stories out of countless ones I could have told you. So of course, with that much death going on there are that many ghosts. Many spirits haunt the bridge, including a man wearing glasses and a woman that continuously keeps mimicking her fall off the bridge. Homeless people camping under the bridge have reported hearing eerie cries and sounds at night, and the ghost of a man who whispers her fault to anyone that walks by, obviously referring to whoever drove him to take his own life, but no one knows who he's talking about. Coming in at number 9 is alien blood. I actually read about this story a few years ago and I didn't realize how much of a lasting impact it left on California, but evidently I guess it did. Back in 1984 at Riverside General Hospital, a woman called Gloria Ramirez was admitted to the ER to have her blood drawn, but as soon as it was drawn, the foulest smell filled the room and her skin started becoming oilier and oilier. Then, like flies, the medical staff started dropping, half started passing out, while the other half lost complete control of their limbs. 5 members ended up being hospitalized and 1 even spent 2 weeks in intensive care. The weird occurrence affected over 24 members of staff, which left a skeleton crew to try and save her life. They failed and she died 40 minutes later. Until this day, no one has any idea what happened or what it was about her blood that took down 23 people. They dub it the legend of the alien blood that poisoned the hospital. And to me, I feel like science has a lot of answers for a lot of things, but when something comes up that they can't answer and nearly 40 years later they still can't answer it, that's worrying. At number 8 we have the Lady in White, because every urban legend video would not be complete without at least one ghostly lady wearing white. Hailed as one of the most famous Californian urban legends, the legend is about the thing that probably makes California famous, the Hollywood sign. The sign that has been the backdrop of countless Instagrams and movies and is said to be haunted by Peg Entwistle, a famous actress from the early 1900s. That's so Hollywood, isn't it? An actress haunting the sign. It came full circle almost. Anyway, the legend goes like this. After an excruciatingly harsh review of one of her movies, one people dubbed a career-ending review, she decided she couldn't take the thought of her career ending, and so she decided to end her life instead. She climbed to the top of the H in the sign and threw herself off of it. So based on that, many people claim a lady in white can be seen hiking in the off-limits area near the sign around the place she killed herself. But if you find yourself up there and are hoping to see a beautiful actress, you'd be quite wrong. What appears is an eerie woman with hollowed out eyes and a skeletal face. If she finds you there alone, she can influence you to follow in her footsteps and end your life as well. In the century that followed her suicide, many suicide cases have been reported in the area, and in 2012 police even found a man's mutilated body parts and decapitated head right where she killed herself. Filling our number 7 slot is the prop of New Pike. So Elmer McCurdy was a famously notorious outlaw who died in the early 1900s. In 1911, his embalmed corpse became a sideshow act through Texas for people who wanted to come and gawk at the criminal and his displayed body. Or rather, his body traveled all over America, eventually landing itself in Long Beach, California. There, his body was mistaken for a prop and was hung in a fun house at New Pike Amusement Park. The truth was only discovered in 1976 when a film crew tried to adjust him and ended up dislodging his arm. Imagine going into that funhouse as a kid expecting mildly scary props and then coming face to face with a real corpse. I'd never go to an amusement park again. Legit I wouldn't. Now at number 6 is Old Stage Road. Now Old Stage Road is located in Salmas and it's been the site of horrible deaths, gang-related deaths, lynchings, and a Japanese concentration camp was even located there during the wartime. So due to all that death, countless ghosts and spirits do haunt the road. But this specific story comes from Redditor Moonriver7811, who said his aunt told him a story of when she was young and pregnant. Her and her husband decided to take some back roads as a shortcut and ended up on Old Stage Road. She was looking out the window for a while and she suddenly saw a woman. The woman was keeping pace with the car and just turned her head to look at his aunt, and what she saw scarred her for life. The skin of the woman was so pale it looked almost transparent. Her hair was like white hay. She seemed almost 100 years old. But it wasn't wasn't even her appearance that freaked his aunt out, it was the hatred and anger she could see in her eyes. The uncle stepped on the gas and they managed to get rid of her, and the user decided after hearing the story he should also go to the road as well with his friends at 3 AM drunk. The friends went there and stopped near Hangman's Tree and decided to walk on the road, not stay inside the safety of their car. Very stupid mistake, kids. One of the friends decided to pee on the tree, douchebag move, and it's not surprising that pissed off spirits after that. They got back into the car and were switching between CDs when they heard a loud "Get Out" on the radio. After hearing it and realizing it was none of them, they drove for their lives. Half a mile later, one of the friends in the back who had been asleep the whole time screamed, saying she'd had the worst nightmare. She never remembered going back into the car and said she was walking down the street and turned around and saw that the car wasn't there anymore. All of a sudden, an old lady with rotten teeth and claws tried to bite her, and that's when she woke up. Despite the road being old as hell, murders still continue to happen on and around it. Coming in at number 5 is Bigfoot. It's like the most well-known urban legend of all time. I'd argue it was maybe even the first one. But anyway, coming in second to Washington, California has the most reported Bigfoot sightings in the US. The creature, which is said to be a giant hairy human ape creature of sorts, is said to live in the wilderness. Yosemite National Park is said to be the most haunted national park in America because it was Bigfoot's first home. Campers have apparently seen it wander into their camps, to which of course they've screamed and ran away. The weirder part is that Bigfoot has been said to scream louder and run too, which is a bit cute, I'm not gonna lie. In 1962 on Mount Shasta, a woman claimed to have seen Bigfoot give birth, which A, I didn't even know it was a female, and B, now we have a mini Bigfoot on our hands. But I guess that was nearly 80 years ago, so it's probably adult Bigfoot now. Either way, I honestly feel like it's a harmless creature, so why don't we just leave the poor thing alone? It's not harming anyone. I mean, it hasn't harmed anyone yet. At number 4 are the Gates of Hell. A deserted road in Antioch called Empire Mine Road has a gate on its side that locals call the Gates of Hell. And at first glance, it honestly looks like a rundown graffitied gate, and most people wouldn't even notice it driving by, but driving by won't do anything to you. It's crossing in the gates that could hurt you. The first legend about the gates is about an insane asylum that it used to be the entrance to. And it was one of those horror movie asylums. I'm talking straitjackets, lobotomies, shock treatments, the whole shebang. Because of that, many believe the ghosts of deceased patients stalk the area, and some even suffer from the same illness that they had in real life. And the spirits around asylums are usually angrier than ones found elsewhere, and if you cross the gate, you could very well be attacked by one of the ghosts. One group of explorers felt rocks being pelted at them, and when they got back into their car, they felt a giant creature leap onto the hood. The second legend is that it was a slaughterhouse that sat near the gates, and that the spirits haunting it are of the animals. But the slaughterhouse was also home to a horrific murder that happened in 1995. A man came running and screaming out of the slaughterhouse, head to toe dripping in blood, claiming his girlfriend had stabbed him. Before medics could get to him, he died. So there is a lot of bad energy radiating around this gate. Filling our number 3 slot is the statue. A girl named Jessica was babysitting for a rich family in California, so you can well imagine that the house was massive with rooms upon rooms inside. During the night in question, the parents went out for a movie, and so the dad told Jessica once the kids are asleep, she could go watch TV in the living room. And that wasn't a nice move so she could be entertained, it was so she wouldn't wander and snoop around the house. The kids go to bed and Jessica starts watching TV. I mean, she tries watching it but can't ignore the clown statue in the corner of the room. Even though she found the statue a bit out of place in line with the other decor, she let it go, but after a while it started freaking her out so much that she had to call the dad. She asked him if she could switch rooms because the clown statue was freaking her out. The father replied saying get the kids and leave the house and call the police. She started asking him why, but he told her to just shut up and do it now. She ended up getting the kids and going to the neighbors and calling the police. But she later ended up calling the dad. He said they didn't have a clown statue and that the children had been complaining of a clown watching them sleep, but they assumed it was just a nightmare. Listen to your kids, people, listen to your kids. It's so funny, I've heard so many variations of this legend, but I had no idea it originated in California. Now at number 2 is the mass murder. Now this is an urban legend that circulates in California every year around Halloween. The legend has been around for decades, but it really only gained traction in the social media age. Yay for Twitter and mass murder. The legend starts with a photo from 1962 of a bunch of masked figures posing for what seems like a Halloween party picture. Everyone's in a white face mask, but the figure in the middle is in a black hooded one. Legend has it moments after the photo was taken, the black hooded figure locked all the doors to the party and then went and killed 7 of the party members before escaping from the scene. No one has any idea who the man is, and the only thing ever found about the case was the mask itself. Ugh, I just don't like people in masks on Halloween from way back when, like their masks were so scary, and these days dressing up for Halloween isn't scary, but back then it actually was. And finally, at number 1 are the witches. East Bay's Black Diamond Mines are one of the scariest places in California. At the end of the 1800s, early 1900s, the area was a thriving coal mining community, and the people who lived there are still buried in the Rose Hill Cemetery. There are so many ghost stories surrounding the mines, but the most popular one is a story of Sarah Norton and Mary. Sarah was a widow who married Noah Norton, and it was widely known that she was a witch. One day her services were called for in the town of Clayton, but on the way there she was thrown out of her buggy and killed. In life, she was a very religious, pious woman who emphasized how she didn't want a funeral, yet the locals of Somerville felt she was owed one. The day of her funeral, a terrible storm hit the town and it was delayed. The following day, another storm hit, but this time the town's livestock also came charging through it. The townspeople realized that this all could have been Sarah's spirit telling them she didn't want a funeral under any circumstances. Since then, her ghost has been seen floating around town, but mostly lurking in Rose Hill Cemetery. Now on to Mary. It was a very common name back then, as you can well imagine, so we don't know what her last name was, but her occupation was being a nanny. But strangely enough, every single child she cared for ended up dying, and so the town accused her of witchcraft. And usually in these witchcraft cases, an innocent person is accused, but with Mary, they actually found evidence of her sorcery rituals. She was hung soon after and is said to be seen near the mines wearing full white. Honestly, what is it with ghosts and wearing white? Like, is it symbolism? What does it mean? Someone tell me.